we hack the code and flip the tag. Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, make fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet. Hey.
Hello, and welcome to Unconventional Wisdom, about conventional wisdom. I'm your host, Kim Miller-Hershon. I am here today with Kevin Oneil. I think you are going to find him just a fascinating dude today. I'm going to give you like his full description, but basically, he has grown multiple different businesses around water sports. Let me tell you his little intro and then we'll get right into it. So, Kevin Oneil may be the luckiest man alive. He scaled multiple seven figure lifestyle businesses, has tanked one or two. His ADHD has led to many adventures and successes, catastrophic failures, but mostly an imbalanced life that tilts towards fun and happiness. When he's not at the helm of his businesses, he's wrestling with his son, ripping Pokemon cards with his daughter, and then he's just having a good life, which we love. So, Kevin, I always ask a random question. So, my random question for you is how did you get into raving, especially in your 40s?
Oh, late 40s actually now. Yeah, it's interesting because I get in there and throw down with these kids, man, and almost every festival we go to, there's some kind of comment from somebody like, "Oh my God, dude, like I want to be you when I grow up." Like big gray beard. I'm in a mosh pit with them. It's 3 a.m. I'm like, let's go. And I'm like, oh my God, dude. Yeah. In a former life, I was a musician when I was in my early 20s. I've always just really loved music. When I started running the businesses and, well, leaving Detroit and getting in the water sports industry was like the end of all that, being that I lived in Key West for 10 years. They don't have the most thriving music scene. And then when I started my businesses, my current partner of one of my businesses lives in Las Vegas. And so a friend of his was like Las Vegas, obviously, like big club scene. They've got all these like huge DJs. He was going through his midlife crisis. And right before he got married, he was like, started going to clubs randomly with one of his buddies. That took him to a huge rave music festival in Miami, and he just had a blast. And I'm a sales guy by nature, and so is Steve. And man, when he wants to, we'll have the most craziest, weird arguments about something. We just calling it selling each other, right? We'll be like, oh, you got to listen to this, or you got to try this food. And then we just both sell each other super hard until one of us gives in. And that's what he did to me. He sold me really hard on EDC in Orlando. And if you're not aware, EDC is arguably the world's largest rave that typically happens in Las Vegas. Insomniac Productions also puts on EDC Orlando, which is a smaller event. Last year there was 350,000 people at last year's EDC, so I don't know in your scope of what you consider big or small. So yeah, we went to EDC in Orlando in 2022. I got baptized because I historically did not like electronic music. At the time, was not a big dancer. I was very skeptical. My wife was a raver in the late 90s, early 2000s. She went to all the underground Detroit raves, basement raves, church raves, this type of thing. And yeah, I went there and I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. In fact, one of our friends goes, that's like the fastest 180 I've ever seen anybody do. I had all the bracelets on and I was all of the things that comes along with a rave. I was fully bought in. I was like, no, this is great. I've never seen anything like this. And then it was just like, rocket to the moon. Sidebar, I recently had a heart attack, like literally, I don't know, less than a year before that. And so it was just like one of those things where I was just questioning like everything, right? And I'm just like, man, at this point, I've given a second lease on life. I don't know that I can be highly skeptical of anything that seems to bring millions of people joy. So I just leaned into it. And now, like in 2 weeks, we'll be in Miami for Ultra. And then I gave up my ticket to my 18-year-old daughter for Forbidden Kingdom in Orlando. And then I just bought tickets for my wife's birthday for Electric Forest, which is a huge rave in Michigan that happened. They light up the whole forest, massive production. Yeah, if you want to see like the world's greatest fireworks festival combined with the world's biggest laser and drone festival, they could probably be playing polka and it'd still be super amazing. But I happen to really enjoy the music. So yeah, 47 and like a hardcore raver.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into our questions because I think you're already, I think, even just by your story, right? You're a little bit of an unconventional guy.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's so I'm going to ask you this question, but we can play with sort of the context. So, what's a
Sure.
piece of conventional business wisdom you followed early on, only to realize later that it was completely wrong for you?
That's a good question. Oh, yeah, leverage, right? So in the beginning, I would always hear like cash is king, and in order to scale, I didn't have the liquidity at the time. Like we would buy, when we started off with one boat, two jet skis. Today we have 35 boats, 15 skis, another head vessel coming in. A head vessel being a large passenger boat, so like a big tour boat, 49 passenger tour boat. And in the beginning, I always heard that, right? Cash is king, but then it was like, oh no, you always gamble with somebody else's money. When it comes to unit economics, let's just say, because we don't have a traditional unit bought, unit sold, cost of goods sold, because we have a lot of varying expenses when you're renting boats. You also have a lot of varying pricing structures. So trying to hit that target and say, oh, we're going to make X amount of percentage per unit sold is a lot more challenging in my industry due to the dynamic nature of cost as well as price to deliver. So at that time, I just say all that something I figured out later after I'm like, okay, we're just going to leverage everything. I'll do all of this on loans. I came to find out like really fast is like figuring out what our what our buying cycle would be on equipment. Initially, I was like, oh, I figured I could rebuild these boats. And we found it out really very dramatically on the car rental business side. That leveraged asset, that price to borrow that money. And in 2020, again, speaking just to the dynamics of all of it, price of money in 2020 and 2021, much different lending environment than we are today. And so what I've learned is that cash is not always king, and that leveraging and using other people's money is not always the answer. And I think to the greater overall scope of that question is that as your business goes through the different life cycles that businesses go through, right? If you can become in this environment a legacy business, I don't think that there are going to be many hard, fast rules that you're ever going to necessarily go, okay, this is the way it's going to be from here on out. It's a constant adjusting to a myriad of different factors.
You know what's interesting? I have interviewed a number of people with ADHD. And what's very interesting is that typically, because schools are just not meant, they're not really constructed for people with any kind of
Learning
learning
disability.
divergence at all,
Right.
that it's interesting what either you thought or you were told about your own success. Because when you're growing up, school is the only measure of success we have, unless you're really good at sports, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, I don't know, maybe you were good at sports, but if you're not good at sports and maybe you were great at school, but people with ADHD typically are not, because it's not meant for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just curious. What did you think you were going to be successful? Did you have anybody who told you you could be you and be successful?
No, oddly enough, I had quite opposite experience. So I never had been around boats before I started my career in water sports. I was not a water person. I didn't fish. I grew up in Detroit. We have the Detroit River. Sure, we have the Great Lakes, but I grew up in the poverty part of actual Detroit, not in the suburbs. And oddly enough, my grandfather had a plumbing company. My dad had a plumbing business. My brother teaches piano. I don't know anyone in my family that directly that wasn't an entrepreneur. My dad business like failed. And my dad was one of those guys who shouldn't have been an entrepreneur, probably. I believe anybody can be an entrepreneur, right? And I believe everybody to some degree should be entrepreneurial. And I think that you do see entrepreneurial traits in people sometimes, but it's not as like transactional. And I think you could interchange like artistic for entrepreneurial, right? It's just basically a creative mindset. And I feel like most people, given a certain, whether it be hobby or interest, it's like that it turns on that piece of the brain that goes, oh, what if, right? And how to, or maybe me, whatever it may be. But my dad, he pounded into my head from an early age. Get a 40-hour week job, work your 40-hour week. It was pounded into my head. And I was like, my grandfather was a plumber, my dad's a plumber, I'll get a job being a plumber. It turns out I hated being a plumber. I didn't like working. I didn't like that job at all. And because I didn't like it, I was never anything I really like put my mind to. I was always had the music thing in the background. I thought maybe I wanted to go to college and be a writer, as if you have to go to college to be a writer. But yeah, so when I started this business, and I have some friends that are, I would say, just like their entrepreneurial spirit was like day one. Oh, I was out there flipping this, I was flipping that. I've got really good friends where it's just like they haven't had a job their whole life. They've always spun stuff up, they've always been in that game, or guys that had like side hustles that finally ditched a 9 to 5. For me, losing that safety net was, from a psychological aspect, was terrifying. Like every piece of it, I was that guy that was just like, oh my God, drug feed on every decision. Like I couldn't get one of the boats, or my first boat. There was like some hiccup where I couldn't get it registered commercially for whatever reason. And I was just like, oh my God, like the whole world's falling down. And I felt like I had to call out to my mentors to just get permission. And that's what I see a lot of guys do. Even guys that own businesses, they still need to ask permission. I see my partners who are managers still feel like they got to come to me and ask for permission most of the time. And I'm just like, dude, spread those entrepreneurial wings. So it was, as I said at the top of the show, I don't know if it was stress. Doctors said it was genetic, but I was panic stricken like 7 days a week, 24/7. I was doing the 16, 18-hour shifts every single day. When we go in the summer season for that business, we go. And I was the guy answering. I had my first Google Ads call was 4 o'clock in the morning, some drunk guy. And I'm picking up the phone answering it because I'm just like, do or die. Because growing up in that environment, it was not good. Detroit in the 90s and the gang activity and gunshots and all that stuff, it was really scary. So I very much like every single trip, every single anything I sold, it, I always had that in like the back of my mind. Oh my God, I never want my kids to have to experience what I went through growing up. And so the ghosts still speak from time to time, but as I've stacked up more wins and stacked up more wins and build more things, and it's just, oh my God, like I have the power to generate revenue, to have good ideas. It's maybe not the business model. And this is me, don't get me wrong. I give credit to all of my people, but it's, man, I can do this. You know what I mean? I can do this no matter what. Given $0, given 100,000, like I've read enough, I've learned enough. Again, I'm still learning on this journey, but they still crop up from time to time, the imposter syndrome, as it were.
Yeah. We're going to talk more about that a little bit
Sure.
later.
Well,
But let me ask you this. So you've definitely reached a certain level of success. You're still growing, but still you're a successful business owner at this point, right?
yeah,
Entrepreneur. What's one thing that people assume that you have figured out on the outside that you still wrestle with on the inside?
that's a good question. Numbers, bookkeeping, and I'm currently working on that. And I don't feel so bad about this one just because in my industry, it's everybody I talk to is always just, oh my God, my books are a mess, or I don't understand the nuanced financial concepts. And I definitely was that guy probably up until really recent, where spreadsheets, P&Ls, operating, equity, all of these things, like looking at a sheet just scared the hell out of me. I'm just like, if things get tight, I will just build more. I will just build bigger. I will just keep on throwing more shit at the wall and see if it sticks. And it served me thus so far. But right now, I feel like I'm currently like in an evolution of going, can I look at this business on paper and go, here's where it makes sense. Here's where it doesn't make sense. Now, if I go into the field and I look at a business and actually look at a business and meet the owner and meet the employees, that stuff I had, but I'm still working through that piece of it where it's like I can look at something on paper and be like bulletproof. But yeah, definitely you're like, oh man, this guy must know money. And I'm like, oh, I don't. I just hide it and squirrel it away and then move it over into this thing and try and get it to work for me. Yeah, I'm maybe not completely financial illiterate anymore. I'm working with like maybe like a fifth grade financial literacy these days. The boys grown up.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. And thank you also for sharing that because I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners can definitely relate to what you're saying.
Yeah. Or the other one is, and I don't mean to be like crass or anything, but everyone always assumed you have way more money than you do. Like always, man. I got to hear that all the time. And let me tell you, it's just, I don't know that coming from where I came from and like that I ever feel like I remember talking to my boss. He was doing like at that time, I don't know, probably 10, 15 million a year. And I said to him, yeah, long story short, I just said $25,000 is a lot to a guy like me. And he said back to me, $25,000 is a lot of money to a guy like me. I'm like, okay, fair enough. So when people are like, will make like offhanded comments, they'll be like, you're rich. I'm like, I'm not rich. I don't know what you're talking about. I am not rich. Yeah, the book From Mate to Millionaire. I guess that doesn't help my cause of saying I'm not rich. I guess by some people's standards, I maybe am, but to other people's, it's just, man, this is kitty change or whatever.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things about that, right? I think we all have a money story. And I know a lot of people because I'm a business coach, right? So I tend to know the details, right? And I think it's very interesting. I was actually having this conversation recently with one of the cohorts that I coach, which is that your business can be worth a lot of money and you just don't know what people's profit margins are or how much money they're really making. And again, maybe it's not your business, but I think the assumption that we make is that if you have a what we would say is a big business, right? And it actually goes back to also like understanding numbers, right? So there's how much revenue you make, and then there's profit, right? And those two things are not the same thing,
Not at all. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And especially if you have a business with capital equipment, right? Or you have huge expenses.
Yeah.
You may have a what you may have a very large business, but you know how much it's actually worth to you can be different. And I'm not taking anything away from the accomplishment. I'm just saying to the audience, really to the listener, that the two things are not the same thing.
Yeah, I've watched guys go tits up because even they didn't have a handle on it, right? They're looking at, oh man, I got millions of dollars of revenue coming through. And then they go and buy a huge house because nothing's separated, right? They're looking at operating net operating income that they have in their checking account. That's a 3 4, for me it's a 6 month runway just due to the nature of my business, and that's completely different. That's not my money. I'm not like, oh yeah, we're gonna go out and buy a Ferrari, we're gonna go out and buy a mansion and do all this. And you really saw and see it still happening right now from the EIDL during COVID. Guys were getting 2, 3, 4, $5 million checks at 2.99 interest rate, and then taking all of the profit from their business, re-injecting the money back into operating, not even revenue growth, not even profit growth. And just because they're going, oh, I'm taking this idle money and putting back into my business, now I can take all of the revenue that we're generating. Now this thing's losing money and you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't even care if it's at 2.99. I don't care if it's at 1.99. I don't care if it's principal only. Eventually, that bill is due. And I personally know guys that are really struggling right now because they went and played that game. And
Right.
as illiterate as I might paint myself, I always was very aware of keeping that separate. Personally, I wouldn't have any money, and then the bank account for the business would have $300,000 in it. And I'm like, awesome. And I'm still not taking a paycheck. Yeah, it's easy to get carried away with that sort of thing.
Right. And any listener who's listening, if you are not American, you might not know this, but during the Small Business Administration during the pandemic, when everything got shut down, made it very easy for small businesses to get business loans. And they gave out very large loans. And so when he said EDIL, that's that business loan that was like basically they were just giving money away. Or
Yeah.
that's what it seemed or felt like at the time. But if it wasn't actually, and there was really no oversight. So
Ton of fraud.
yeah. And just like you said, a lot of mixing. And the other thing that you said, which I do just want to point out because I run across this way too often, which is that how much money is in your business checking account is not financial management. It's not a
Mm-mm.
profit and loss. It's not a balance sheet. It does not talk to the health of your business if you are not managing the things on the other side of things.
Bank account bookkeeping, man.
Yeah, there you
I was
go.
guilty as charged for the first 3 years for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Good. Thanks for bringing those points up. All right.
Yeah.
Next question. If you could rewrite the rule book on leadership, what's one outdated belief that you'd throw away and what would you replace it with?
You got so many good questions. You're really like making me think on this. Yeah, I'm not like a big like 5 minute manager guy. Like I've always had my own style of leadership. Something that I've noticed when you look at like EOS, like entrepreneurial operating system, and like right now, I feel like the soup du jour in the I've never run a business, but I'm running a business consultancy playbook is selling SOPs. This is, and again, I see and hear so much of it. And this does come from Gino Wickman. And I have read Traction and I have read Rocket Fuel. I've never signed up for their EOS. But it goes back to that first question, right? So I see a lot of people that are just getting started that immediately want to start corporatizing their small business. They want to have, we're going to have our rocks, we're going to have foundations, we're going to have all these systems and processes. And it's just, look, dude, right now, your first year, your second year, like you've got one job, is to figure out money coming through the door. Once you can figure out that money coming through the door piece of it, then you can start training somebody and working alongside them. The other thing that I see that's happening a lot is people just going, oh, we're just going to offshore. We're going to hire VAs. We're going to get, and that's fine. For administrative, we employ a handful of VAs, but there is nothing like the one-on-one, the checking in, the going and grabbing a coffee, the grabbing a lunch, the off script, like, hey, how's it going? Like, again, no, we had our managers meeting last week, and I said, you guys have all been here for a certain amount of years. This question isn't going to affect like your job or what I think of you or your performance or anything like that. What is it that you hate about your job? What is it the one thing? Because everybody has shit. Like we were talking about it right before we got on. It's mine. I'm like, man, I don't want to sit in meetings that don't have a purpose. And sometimes I don't want to sit in meetings at all. So if rather than set a meeting with somebody or bring everybody in the room, rather than have everybody come in and just talk to them like a normal human being, and understand that if you're hiring for this job, at some point in time, you did this job and now you're hiring for it. I don't know if it's common knowledge or it's wisdom or whatever, but at the end of the day, especially for small business operators, it's like you got to hire for better than you. If you're the best marketer, if you're the best sales guy, if you're the best admin, if you're the best, pick one of those and go get a job for $500,000 a year in corporate America and leave all this entrepreneurial stuff to somebody that's got lower blood pressure, man. Because the reality of it is, if you're going to sit in the main, call it the executive chair, if you're going to be the boss, all of these people really roles have to be reversed and they have to be teaching you something on every call. You've got to be learning something about what it is that they're doing and understand that. Stop trying to get your hands in the middle of everything and let these people run. I'm not saying that I'd throw out all the corporate stuff or any of these like managerial books. I think there's something to all of it, but I don't know that there's one book or one set of standards or rules that any business that, as Steve Jobs said, kicked a hole in the universe. Steve Jobs was like, and Elon Musk are both known for being extremely mercurial CEOs. I don't know that. Steve Jobs, they said, never even wore shoes in his office. So I don't know that Steve Jobs would go and read like whatever it is, any one of these management books you can go pick up and go, yeah, that's how we do things at Apple. I think you have to figure out what your managerial, your leadership style is and lean into that. And if it becomes, obviously, if you're a guy like me, sometimes I'll say off color things and I have to watch it. I'm like, oh, it's just not me and two 20-year-old guys anymore. It's I got all sorts of people working for me. So I got to curb that, but it's still there a little bit. The jostling, the elbow, being one of the boys is how I treat everybody's. And what I mean by that, it's the same level of respect I have for the guy that scrubs the boat every day to the same level of our accountant or one of the consultants we work with. I'm going to still show up and be Kevin at every level. And I think it's also just meant to inspire. So I don't know if that's conventional or unconventional. I guess to put a bow on it, I would just say find the way that inspires your people, and you won't necessarily have to lead them. If anything, they might lead you to a better pond of water to
Right.
drink from, hopefully.
And I think you said something actually that I think is really noteworthy, which is recognizing the value that they bring. I think people often think of the people who do the cleaning as being less than or not as smart, not as worthy, like whatever the things are. Listen, nobody wants to say those things, but the reality is that the way that they often treat those people is that. And here's the reality: somebody didn't come in and clean those boats and clean those jet skis, you're not going to have any customers. Nobody wants to walk in to something that is dirty. And I think recognizing the value that everybody brings to what you do and treating them with respect, I think is tremendously important. And I think you, as the leader, model that. And frankly, for me, if you work for me and you don't treat the person who cleans with respect, you're not my person.
Yeah, I learned right away, like in the early days of I'd get busy and I'm like, here, do this thing. Quite literally in water sports, I've gone into storms, right? Like we've made, let's call it a questionable call, or the Gulf Stream's weather is very unpredictable in here and at times, and sometimes you can't get away from a customer getting into a squall line or like a serious downpour where it's not dangerous, but it's scary for them. And given the search and given the situation, like danger's not like far around the corner, right? Oh man, like right now we got winds that are blowing at 20, heavy downpour, but we're in a protected bay. So we know that if we're caught in this, it's no big deal. But if it gets chippy out there, if the winds kick up another 10 knots or we get lightning or something like this, now it becomes dangerous. So there's been plenty of times where I've had to race out and go, and not that people even call me or scared. It's like, I know that this could turn in the next 5 or 10 minutes, and I don't want them being out there alone if it turns. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to guide them back because I know in a moment I'm going to be able to get them to safety. I know every square inch of this water, where everything is. I know that if we got caught in something crazy, I'm going to run over here. We're going to tie off. We're going to walk through the water and up on the shore and go somewhere that's not on the water in the middle of a friggin' squall. And so my guys have just watched me go, this is going to get chippy. You stay here. I'm going, right? Like, I'm not putting you guys in harm's way. I got this. And then it just got to a point to where some of my guys that were with me for year one or year two, you're like, no, no, we're going. We got it. I'm just like, all right, man. And then you get into year four and year five, and now it's just like job requirement, right? As mariners, when you get your captain's license, it's one of those things where you have a duty, you are duty bound that if somebody runs, even if they're not your customer, if there's somebody's out there drowning, it's like a part of your license that you are required to go help them. You could get charged for negligence, you could get your ticket under, could be suspended. There's a whole list of things that could happen if the Coast Guard come to find that you could have came and rescued or helped somebody and didn't do it. So now I never train a dockhand. I train guys to be captains. I want you guys to get your captain's license, even if you're not working for me, you go off. I want you to gain something from this, where if this becomes a ceiling for you, you have something to go off and go break that ceiling. And so now we go through enough training, we go through enough safety drills, we go through enough stuff that all of our dockhands now are just, you're required to act like a captain, right? And I had a guy that he'd been in the industry many years, came from a different company, not from my tutelage. And I was like, hey guys, we got X amount of boats out there. I need 5 guys on skis, get rounding all these people up. We literally have in our SOPs, like along the sound, like here's spot A, B, C, D, E. Worst case scenario, go beach the boat, get them on the shore. They know the drill. And a guy had worked and he was a few years older. He was probably in his early 30s. And he goes, yeah, man, in front of the whole crew, that's dangerous for me. And I said, you're fired. I was like, I'm like, good job, dude. That's the quickest way to get fired here is that we have customers that are depending on us to keep them safe. You can't avoid accidents in this business, no matter everything you do. Mother Nature will have a different plan. The customers have different plans. Other people on other boats and jet skis have different plans. So we take safety very seriously. We shut down tens, if not hundreds of $1,000s in revenue a year in overabundance of caution. However, sometimes you just can't sidestep it. And everybody here knows is, hey, man, if you're not willing to go into the storm sometimes to help somebody that's more ignorant of these waters than you are, this is not the job for you. A lot of fun, a lot of adventure, and sometimes it's going to get chippy and it might get a little dangerous, but not to these younger guys. It's not, man. We're going
Yeah.
to train them to be good stewards of our waterways, as I like to say.
Good. All right. What's one unconventional habit or mindset shift that's helped you grow the business?
Yeah, the people that are like, I'll hear it all the time, one channel, one avatar, like one product. I think that's terrible advice. I don't subscribe to that at all. If I feel like, I don't know if you've ever seen Chris Corner. He's got a podcast or a YouTube series called Corner Office. And if you scroll social media in the business and follow business influencers, you'll come across the same. But he has a podcast or YouTube channel where he basically just interviews all sorts of people and all sorts of different business models. Most small business owners are not Tesla. They're not
Sure.
their ability to scale is limited. And I'm not saying that anything like look, anything is scalable. It's just been my experience that I love business. I love the way different business models operate. I love the idea that marketing means one thing to one company than it does to another. Local SEO versus top of funnel awareness marketing, like your business, right? Like it's you can't just run a Google ad like consultant or a cohort leader and spin up Google AdWords. You'll be broke. So you very much have to start at awareness. You have got to create all this content, podcasting, book writing, collaborations, like all this stuff, get them into your pipe, fill out the email list, and then create value, lead gens. Like it's a whole other animal from Bill's commodity carpet cleaning business here in Navarre that buys the equipment, runs some ads, and then gets some jobs and has to figure out sales, whatever it may be. And whether it be e-com that you can deliver in at scale and a product in a TikTok shop. That's like my next like obsession I'm interested in is retail, like online retail. I haven't dove fully into it, but I know it's on the horizon for me. I think like getting a better understanding of how different business models work, how you can weld on certain other businesses, you can weld on different add-ons that might not be like conventional, if you will. Like we bought like a big 35 by 18 shed and we powered it, we drywalled it, we put flooring in, and then that became a retail spot because now we're on back of a hotel. Like no one's just rolling up like trying to buy retail on our beach. However, I've got whatever it is 500, 600 people walking through our doors every single day. And I'm like, man, this is just crazy not to. So it's, oh man, retail is super interesting to me. We're still learning the functions of that, how that works. Nothing crazy. I think we do 110, 120 grand a year through our store. But it's also this idea of when they go through our cart, we have buy a pontoon boat rental. You rent a boat, and then we have, damage protection of up to $1,500. We sell insurance ostensibly, right? So a self-written policy that we sell and cover. Trip protection. Hey, add a paddleboard. We have all these add-ons, all these different things that you get on to make the experience bigger, grander, better peace of mind. And I'm like, that's great. That's amazing, right? When they're online, we're banging down their door, add this, add that. But when they get here, I want to add more. And then I told them that they didn't like this one because I was like, I want to sell chocolate covered bananas on the docks because when they're done paying there, they've got another 100 yards to walk to the boat. And there should be something else between them and that boat that they can spend more money on. There's got to be another impulse purchase. I don't think anybody wanted to dip bananas in chocolate, so they opted for a Dippin' Dot stand. I said, fantastic. I'll meet you in the middle there. But yeah, I think that just learning how businesses work in general. And I say it all the time, like we run the conference for water sports, but I'm like, man, most of the stuff I talk about, most of the stuff I teach is applicable to any business. There's certain universal truths, but when you get in the nuts and bolts of some of these unique niche businesses, it's man, like this is super interesting. This whole product gets moved a different way. Now we have a team of three, and now I have this business and it pencils at 1.2 million, and we've got two employees, and I got this business that pencils at just under 3 million that's got in season 20 some employees. And it's like each of them have scalability challenges, right? Big, huge things I want to get over the home. I'm a startup guy. I love spinning up stuff. And if I can get a little bit of call it escape velocity on a certain product where I'm like, man, this thing's cooking with gas. Rather than sit there and rack my brain about, okay, what does this look like if we open a secondary boat rental location? Should we do it in this market? Should we do it in a further market away? Like, does this make sense? Like car washes or laundromats where those businesses like do a certain amount of revenue per square foot, everything pencils out real normal. But some of the businesses that I'm involved in, as I said at the top, they don't pencil the same way. Like when you look at a P&L sheet and a balance sheet for Destiny Water Adventures or the car rental business, there's a lot of moving parts. When you look at Take My Boat Test, other than the governmental hoops that we had to go through, which were a pain in the butt, but once we got through them, that pencils very easily. There's not much to that at all. Our Christmas light business, pencils completely different. Conference, pencils complete, even all of the mechanics of it. It's, oh man, before we ever put a down payment on a convention center, we're selling tickets and then we're using that revenue to place to the convention center. And then we get up to a certain point and then it becomes profitable. And all that business happens inside of 3 days. So God forbid, knock on wood, we don't get a hurricane that could like upset the whole apple cart. I'd be on pins and needles if I had to make all of my money in basically a 2 or 3 day thing. And then if that goes sideways, back to the raves, right? Oh my God, the rave production companies have been killed overnight with one bad festival, out of business, one night, 2 nights,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So I think it's really important. And for me, like you mentioned college, I feel like I'm getting like my PhD, but instead of reading about different business models, we're just executing on them.
And I think you said to me when we were talking before, which I think is a great point to bring up here, is that I'm gonna paraphrase. Like you really need to know yourself and you need to know what you're good at. So for you, you always are looking for the new thing, right? Opportunity, and you want to capitalize on what and having a lot of different businesses with a lot of different partners because you're the idea guy. You are not the execution guy, right? And so knowing that about yourself and finding the right partners who are good at executing has been a great it's been a great model for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, it's been profitable, it's been fun. Always the most important thing. Like at the end of the day, we do this to buy back our time. I'm not sitting here trading my time for dollars. I like making money when I sleep and hanging out with my family and traveling when I'm awake. And it's like I want to spend as much time on earth like doing those things. And it's another unconventional thing when people are just like, what do they call it? Overnight success, 20 years in the making, and there's no such thing as passive income. I've got a couple things that I feel like, man, it's like mailbox money. Don't get me wrong, we had to, but this whole like you need to grind 20 hours a day. I agree with that, I guess, in most part, like most of the time. But it's, man, I don't think if you don't get in there and get your feet wet and dilly dally around with a couple things, like, man, you never know what could be out there. Like, I know somebody who rents liquor licenses. So they buy a liquor license for 400,000 bucks and then they lease it out to people for 10, $20,000 a month. Is it a business, like, so to speak? No, but man, is it a hustle that can literally just pay you good dividends on something that you don't really have to think about? Absolutely. So I always feel like, oh man, what is it out there that are not selling a course on? It's not drop shipping. It's not be a social media manager. It's like there's things out there that are being close to the vest by guys that are like super quiet about something super niche and they are crushing it and they are not talking about it. And I'm like, I want to find out more about those things. So yeah, we're gonna keep on chipping away for sure.
All right, I love that. I have one last question for you, and you
Mhm.
mentioned it before. It's about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So, what if you're going to feel it at this point in your life? What circumstance is going to come up? And then the second part is just what do you do about it?
Yeah, I had it real bad like the first few years. Like I just had zero confidence. I didn't, I was just always, oh my God, you know what I mean? What if it crumbles? What if it falls apart? What am I going to tell my family? I went through that. And then the next thing I started going through when I started doing my podcast and going to events, I started sitting with guys that like want to talk about like publicly traded stocks and or publicly traded companies or private companies that are doing 50, $100 million a year. And I'm just like, man, some of these guys are just so sharp. And honestly, it's just it's time in the game. But you got to be in the game though. You know what I mean? You actually have to read books. And to your point, call this a nice pitch for you. You have to join cohorts, hire consultants. Look, if you knew what I paid our financial consultant right now that meets with me twice a week, trying to bring this into a power of the eye dashboard for me, because I do have so much going on, and there's a lot of cross pollination between companies and labor and insurance and marketing and all these things that, you know, he's an MBA. He was what's the accountant? MBA.
CPA?
Yeah,
Mhm.
CPA. He had an MBA, but he's an accountant and he built like basically a consultant for adventures and tourism. And it's super expensive. I'm like, man, by the time I'm done, I feel like I need to have a piece of paper on a wall somewhere by the time I'm done paying you, dude. This is expensive. But at the same point in time, like as I said, I feel like I got pretty good entrepreneurial chops. I feel like I understand marketing. I love sales. Like I understand all those things to bring in through the door. Now it sits into some of these more like obscure or more like nuanced business concepts and like how the interworkings of a company like Apple comes into play and what happens at a board. What's unit economics? What's cost of goods sold? Like all of these things that are in a business degree when I sit down with some of these guys and they start talking shop and I understand it. You know what I mean? And are there also things that I've already said? And I'm like, oh man. Or when I hear them talking to somebody else, and sure, they're throwing in their business lingo of the week, things that the guys like. We had the guy from Vote Setter, and he kept on saying unlock. He kept on saying the biggest unlock for us. And my partner said it the next day. I said, dude, it's been everything I've had to do today to not say the phrase unlock because these are like M&A guys and they have their certain little lingo. But when it comes to the core of them helming these like big chairs, and don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm in a position to go answer an ad for Pepsi or Coca-Cola to be their CEO tomorrow, but I'm getting there and I'm still learning because to me, I think that is the coolest thing. I think a guy to be like, oh, yeah, he got hired to be the CEO of this company and the CEO of this company. Somebody is just, oh, yeah, dude, I can sit in an executive chair for NVIDIA or I could sit in an executive chair for Coca Cola. I know how business works. And it's sitting down with some of those guys and being able to bat the ball back and forth to where it's Kevin for a small business owner, like, man, he knows his shit. And every time I could sit down with somebody like that and just have a good conversation back and forth, where I'm not going to say they don't little brother me still sometimes. Little brothering is like where, like, oh, hey, little guy. For the most part, I can walk into those rooms these days and have some more like nuanced intellectual conversations. And I feel, yeah, man, you're not saying anything I haven't heard before. You know what I mean? Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. And yeah, we're nowhere near close. I'm still working on it. But yeah, that it always makes me feel good when I can have a really good conversation with somebody
Mhm.
that's in those next levels. And I'm always like, I'm smart too.
Yeah, there you go. And I think one thing that I would like to emphasize is that you got to be in the room, you got to be at the table.
Yeah.
No matter how you feel about it, you got to take the step. You got to be there. There's no way to get over that, there's no way to learn except for to put yourself in those circumstances and again, be at the table. Yes. So I think that's a really important piece of it.
I got a quick funny story for you about that if we got time. I went to this my first like business conference. So my podcast partner has been in the corporate world, so to speak, for the last few years. He's had his business last 15 years. And so our podcast, we do like the old AM or FM like programming style where you have the real kind of straight-laced nerdy smart guy, and then you got the guy covered in tattoos and is real brazen, wild doctor, so to speak. And so he kind of introduced me into this world. And so we go to this conference. And man, you talk about fish out of water, man. I'm just like, oh my God, dude. There's like an international tourism conference. So I'm like, what does one wear at an international tour conference? And so I go and I get a pair of like business casual Skechers. It's international. So I'm like, maybe I want to look like a European. So I go to JC Penney's or whatever, and I get these like salmon colored pants, right? They're pink, if I'm being honest. They're pink. And I have this like green polo shirt, and I'm like, yeah, I'm looking real business casual. So I, of course, walk in and I got my lanyard on, and Greg's nowhere to be found. So I'm just walking the house, and I hear this like little broken accent voice. I couldn't tell you what the accent was, but it was, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. She's pointing at my pants. And I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm like, they notice, exactly my target demographic. They're going to compliment me on the pants. She's, you have the sticker still, the side sticker on the back of my pants. I was like, oh, you fucking idiot, man. And I'm laughing. I'm like laughing by myself. And I'm looking out the window of this convention center. I'm like dying laughing. I'm like, I am such an idiot. And now every year I still go to the same conference, but I wear my 5-inch running shorts and I wear a tank top. And they come up to me, they're like, oh, we're glad you like dressed up for the occasion. I'm like, this is me, dude. This is like me on the docks. This is me at a business conference. You want to talk business? I'm happy to talk business. If you want to talk shit, there's the exit, man. I don't care what you think, dude.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And so I think that is a perfect actually place to end, which is like really being comfortable in your own skin. It takes a while to do that, right? And it takes some
Yeah.
of us longer than others. But to really be able to show up as yourself and to not let what other people may judge you on be like, I'm confident enough in me to show up as me. And
Yeah.
guess what? I don't need everybody to like me. And if you want to prejudge who I am because of how I'm dressed, that's on you. That is not a reflection of me.
Nah, I think you're dressed really smart. In fact, before I saw the under of the watch, I was like, I bet you have an orange watch strap on. And you
I
do.
do.
And so do
All
I.
right. And so do you.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate. I've been really blessed. I will say, I think for many years, like even into my late 30s, I didn't really know who I was in life. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I feel like I found my calling. And some people feel it's late in life. You read some statistics, they say the average age of an entrepreneur is like 45 or 44 or something like that. It means there's plenty of people that don't get started until they're in their 50s. And this idea of the 20-year-old startup billionaire, millionaire guy is one out of a million guys that are just on Instagram pretending. I said, I don't think it's ever too late to start. And I'm, like I said, I'm so fortunate I found this because I love it. I love every last piece of it. And it for a guy like me, as Rich told me many years ago, it's made me a lot of money and it buyed me back my time. And I get to do so many cool things. We're going to go to Ultra and then we get back and then we're going to go to Japan for 2 weeks and then we're going to get back and then we're going to go to Michigan. And the funny thing is I always wanted to be in a band so I could travel. So it's back to the M&A guy. Dream unlocked.
There you Oh, I love it. All right. You can't get better than that. I think that was like a perfect end. Yep. So you have been listening to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom with me, your host, Kim Miller-Hershon, my guest, Kevin Oneil. Kevin, is there some place that you want to send people?
Yeah, you can go. Actually, you can go on Amazon and buy my book if you're super interested. It's $10. It's called Mate to Millionaire. If you look on Amazon and look it up, yeah, it's 135 pages, quick read with some life lessons that I learned about small business and a little bit of my story. And yeah, other than that, Kevin and Greg Live.com should be up here by the end of the month. If you go there today, nothing will be there other than just like a little landing page. But yeah, kevinandgreg.com, Mate to Millionaire on Amazon. And yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me.
Good, good. And my peeps, what I would love you to do is one of two things, or maybe both things, because we're into abundance. So, one, sign up for my newsletter. People are liking it. It's once a week, one idea and one thing to try. And then if you're listening to this audio and you can't see me, I'm into fashion. So there's always a fun, colorful picture of something that I've been wearing or put together. So that's fun too. And then the second thing is that if you want to talk and learn more about what I do and a little bit more about productivity and about really being more successful and running your business, join one of our webinars. We're starting them up and I'm doing them live. So you get a little bit of chance if you want to ask me any questions or talk to me live, do that too. Okay, go out there and be a better human.
Where cliches